Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome. I'm Antara and you're watching Point Break. Sridhar Vembu, the co-founder and chief scientist of Zoho, one of the people who proved that world-class software could be built from India, said something recently that honestly I haven't been able to stop thinking about. He said the real issue facing India is how to create jobs for its massive cohort of youth in a very uncertain global landscape. And he also said that Zoho has in fact avoided layoffs, but at the same time hasn't really created many job opportunities in the recent years. He said that the money that would have gone to hiring is going to AI, is going to servers, compute, and data centers instead. And the numbers, quite frankly, are very, very uncomfortable because freshers now represent around 15% of IT hiring compared to nearly, I believe, 28% a few years ago. Companies are no longer recruiting large batches of graduates in anticipation of future projects. Hiring essentially has become selective, capability-led, and tied directly to confirmed client demand. At the same time, there are green shoots. IT hiring did grow 6% year on year in July. The six largest IT companies added around 5,400 employees in Q1 financial year 27. AI and ML roles surged 33%. So, which story here is true? A recovery, or is it a smaller, fundamentally different employment model dressed up as growth? That is essentially the question that we are trying to answer in today's episode. I'm Antara. This is Point Break. Let's get right into it. My two guests today see this problem from very different places. One from inside the advisory rooms where these decisions are essentially made, and the other from the data. Sunil Padmanabh is the founder and principal of Sunil Padmanabh Advisory, which is an AI-first strategist, CXO advisor, and startup ecosystem catalyst based here in Bengaluru. He, in fact, advises companies on AI strategy, GCCs, and digital transformation, which essentially means that he sits in the boardrooms where decisions about hiring versus AI spending are actually being made. So, Sunil, a very, very warm welcome to you on Point Break. And my second guest today, of course, is Gaurav Vasu, who is back on Point Break. He's the founder and CEO of UnearthInsight, the research and intelligence platform that tracks Indian IT more rigorously than almost anyone. He has been here on Point Break before, and he has the data on what is actually happening inside this industry versus what companies are saying in earnings call. Gaurav, it's good to have you back. Gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you.
Thanks, Antara.
It's a
Good to be
true
back.
pleasure. True pleasure. All right, before we go anywhere else, I want to ask both of you something directly. IT hiring, as we were talking about it, is up 6%. Freshers are growing 6%. AI roles are up 33%. But at the same time, freshers are still only 15% of hiring versus nearly 28% a few years ago. Would you say that India's IT sector is actually recovering, or are we seeing selective growth within, a fundamentally smaller employment model? Gaurav, if you want to take this first.
Thanks, Antara. Yeah, so I mean, if I look back to your question on freshers, right? I mean, if you go back to the hype cycle of 2020 or post 2020, right, where we had a sudden digital transformation need and clients were spending a lot of dollars on transformation, right? Traditional implementations of ERPs, HCMs to a lot of discretionary budget and transformation. We had a hype cycle where TCS for the first time ever onboarded close to about 100,000 plus freshers, right? That was post 2021 cycle, right? But again, if you see today's in the last earning cycle and what they talked about of onboarding about 25,000 freshers. So they're actually down. If you just look at the largest player in the ecosystem, and I'll talk about some of the data that we see at Unearth Insight on the overall industry. But if you look at, it's actually 1/4 of what TCS was doing in the hype cycle. Or even if you go back to the standard number that somebody like a large employer, TCS, with about over 600,000 people, which is actually about 10% of the whole Indian IT ecosystem, right? Or technology and GCC and outsourcing ecosystem, they have actually halved, right? The peak cycle for them was 100,000 or 110,000 people, but otherwise 40, 50,000 that they would do to now about 20, 25,000 people. So even if I look back on the overall industry, we are actually down by about almost 60, 75%. of the amount of freshers. Close to about 7 to 9 lakh freshers were getting hired by all the tier one, tier two, tier three. That's a definition we follow, right? Large,
Yeah.
mid-size, and small technology services firms, starting from TCS all the way up to, let's say, ITC Infotech or Birla Soft and KPIT or Zensars of the world, right? Similar is the story on the GCC. Slightly different because GCC is not large fresher recruiter. GCC doesn't bring people at the bottom of the pyramid, but they hire niche people for specialist skills from top IITs and select organizations, right? So they definitely had never been a fresher hiring ecosystem. So yeah, if you look at it beneath the numbers, I don't think, Antara, I would say it's still a recovery.
Okay.
It's still early stages for us to say whether AI is going to pivot or change the entire fresher hiring model. I think the academia needs to catch up to the industry and customer demands. But yeah, from the highs of 7-8 lakh people getting hired from campuses, we are down to about 1,80,000 people for FY27. That's a prediction from Unearth Insight, based on all the bottom up data that we're capturing for about 400 odd listed, non listed players in the country.
Okay. All right, Gaurav. Thank you for that. Sunil, you want to share your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess here the larger issue is not what AI is doing to jobs, but and the end it's not it's the end of an era of mass hiring. So what is happening is really that we are moving from a effort economy to an outcome based economy for IT. So which means that AI is presenting newer opportunities for organizations to redesign work, and that is the compulsion. So what we are actually struggling is our ability to cope with this redesigned work, and how we are actually handling the apprentice model itself. So the whole definition of freshers, what they were expected to do, the typical coders and testers, is where the challenge and the issues are. So what typically the AI deployments have done is to force and compel organizations and various consumers to relook at how work is to be designed. So actually, the tasks, the roles have not been eliminated. The roles have transformed. For example, the conventional software testing, has moved to a more AI-driven, integration testing. So it's like an AI validation engineering. So the role has moved horizontal, and it has not actually eliminated the task. So the challenges for organizations when it comes to fresher is, it's not about the redeployment issue. It's about how they perform roles, leveraging their actual existing experience of traditional coding. So which means that they do things like AI validation, AI governance, AI related risk assessment, and AI hallucinations evaluations. So these kind of work are being open to the freshers, and that's where I see a significant shift in how freshers will be consumed. So yes, it's all about outcomes, and the current challenges is how quickly are we able to cope with the transition. So which means AI is giving you opportunities to infuse these freshers into roles faster than the roles are appearing to be disappearing. So that's exactly where the situation is today. And if, for example, if Infosys get a banking contract, have to deploy 500 freshers. So there is the smart model always involves how work first has to be redesigned, in where the repetitive task, which is an area of concern, which has eliminated jobs, that's taken over by AI. But there is always these freshers who do overseeing kind of a role, like a quality engineering, like AI risk analysis for regulated industry, and more importantly, the conventional coding and development work also has shifted. So there is an opportunity really for even these freshers to act in the context of new design work. So that's where I see a significant shift and the current challenges are.
All right. All right, Sunil. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that. I also want to talk about this. The traditional Indian IT model was built on a particular kind of hiring, right? I'm talking large fresher batches, campus recruitment at scale, training programs that really turned engineering graduates into, deployable resources over the next 6 to 12 months. A bench that essentially absorbed uncertainty. Now, like you mentioned, AI is changing every part of that equation as we speak, right? Companies can produce more software with smaller teams. Coding, testing, documentation, and support are all increasingly AI assisted. The bench model basically is becoming economically, I would say, unsustainable. Uh, Gaurav, Unearth Insight has data on this. Would you say that India is experiencing a temporary hiring slowdown, or would you call it a permanent structural shift? And also, can you like separate those two things from the numbers that you're seeing?
So, Antara, if you look at it again, I'll add into what even Sunil said, right? And I'll talk
Please.
about if
Yeah.
you look at what's happening, it's a definitely a structural shift because your business model itself is structurally different. There was a point in time where you would have enterprises like JPMCs of the world to cities or Amazons, Googles of the world who would actually come to you with a predictable contracts, right? Predictable types of enterprise solutions that they are buying, on which you would actually maintain, sustain, build, and customize some of those. But those structural model itself is changing, right? Like Sunil said, a lot of the enterprises now want outcomes, right? They're not going to ask you to just implement a particular ERP, but they're also going to ask for about what's the outcome that you're driving with that. And that's a challenge, not just the Indian, but the global tech services firms, including Capgemini's, Cognizant's of the world, and Accentures of the world are also facing structurally because the business model has changed. The concept of build to hire or bench that you're talking about, made to stock, there were different terminologies. Each services, I have been part of those services organizations, and now we service some of them, right? So there used to be different terminologies that they would use. That model sustained because just like a retail domain, you would understand what a Gaurav and Antara would pick on a football match day. They would enter a Walmart store, they would pick up a couple of bottles of beer and they would walk off. So that predictability existed. But here you're
Okay.
talking about a CIO who's actually transitioning and changing the entire look and feel of the enterprise technology itself inside a Walmart or inside a bank like an HSBC or inside a
Yeah.
even a small and a mid-sized enterprise, right? When that's happening, you can't assume that the bench model will sustain, right? So yeah,
Right.
you're absolutely right. There were days, and the fresher was actually a significant part of the bench.
Hmm.
If a TCS or an Infosys or an HCL is hiring, let's say 20, 30, 40,000 freshers, they would sit on what you call as a bench postcode inside an organization and remain as a supply pool, multi-skilled
Right.
into multiple skills and where the demand would come in. So there are
Right.
three or four structural changes. The operating model itself has changed.
Hmm.
Gone are the days of 6, 7%. And Antara, we have spoken about this in some of our other
Yeah.
discussions, right?
Yeah.
We are now structurally at a phase where the net new demands are very new scope and new type of deals as compared to the other. So structurally, you have slowed down to about 2 to 3% is our prediction for this year, both organic and inorganic, right? So we will be more in a we have already moved to that model, and increasingly we'll move to a model of specialization, domain expertise, and that's what is lacking today,
Okay.
both in the campus graduates and even at the lateral level, because the type of work that you're executing for client is more outcome driven rather than here is a piece of pie, I've just delivered this piece and then I've handed it over to another service provider, or I've handed it over to a headquarter. So one, there's a structural change. Second, there's a business model itself that's changing, and that business model can no longer accommodate, let's say, a 6% bench or a 5% bench, right? There were organizations who would operate at 8 to 10% bench as well. I can't name, but again, if you look at tier 1 players, tier 2 players, and mid size and small unlisted players, they would all operate between 2 to 10%. That was the range that at any given point in time that they would maintain. But that model is now, like you said, it is not sustainable because your client structures have changed, the deal sizes have become much shorter. They're no longer 3 year transformation deals, right? There are about 9 months to 12 months or 15 months transformation cycle where AI becomes much more important. Even in the short term deals, right? If you look at carefully, while the fresher numbers have gone up and spend on fresher as a percentage of spend or revenue has gone down, but the demand for subcontracting has still gone up, right? Which means there are niche specialized needs which they are not able to build themselves. They would actually partner with someone in North America or in Germany or in France and UK, and they would build. So this has become more just-in-time hiring model or
Okay.
just-in-time fulfillment from either internal sources or subcontractors, or now there's talks of forward deployed engineers that will get built over a period of time. So there are changes that are happening, and some of them have made reactive decisions around it, and some of them are actually building proactive capability hubs for solving this.
Understood. All right. Sunil, my next question is to you. You advise companies on AI strategy and digital transformation, right? When your clients talk about AI, are they using it to reduce hiring, improve margins, or both? And are they being honest about which one it is?
Yeah, so great question. In fact, 8 out of 10 large enterprise clients know that there is some productivity expected out of an AI transformation. But honestly, there is no real preparation around what will be the combination of AI and the human judgment involved. So they are not ready for that. So I'll give an example of what kind of AI opportunities are happening while the disruption is going on. First is the AI governance related opportunities, because most of the AI work has to talk to the legacy SAP, Salesforce kind of systems. Then, which is typically the AI integration. Then the AI operations, what used to be the typical DevOps. It's a similar opportunity for AI operations. There is AI cybersecurity. So there are very significant opportunities that AI transformations are providing. But I think the biggest challenge for even a majority of the matured organization is how ready are they to redesign work itself, which
Right.
means that they are not, it's not about eliminating roles, it's about how work is getting shifted with focus, like repeatedly I said, and Gaurav added a lot of data points to that in terms of how we are supporting a particular task
Yeah.
with a combination of AI productivity and judgment. So whenever organizations the board decides that let's deploy AI selectively, there is a rush and compulsion to keep in pace with the peers. So they are not very familiar, many of the big names you're talking about, on how fast they should run with AI. So it's by and large jumping into the bandwagon. But there are many forward thinking organizations whom I engage with, who typically think about what is really AI impacting. Is it improving productivity, and what percentage of my workforce should I redeploy? So this redeploy is an very overbeaten word here. And again, what is the AI fluency around that? The AI platform engineering, the typical AI security related
Right.
questions.
Right.
How do I coexist with AI is probably the biggest challenges organizations and leadership is facing. So one of the things that is working very well with these forward thinking organizations who are deployed AIs, who really know what type of persona and work happens. It's not more about role elimination here, but so I think many of the common understanding is how do we resist this job elimination kind of stuff. So that's a battle you will never win,
Yeah.
because let's face the fact that some jobs are really going to go all the repetitive tasks, but the productivity tasks, wherein what's typically the customer outcomes, customer sensitivity, customer journeys involved, these are the new opportunities AI is throwing up. And if you have seen, even Infosys is calling these freshers as frontier engineers, who are
Yes.
ready for an SAP integration, who are ready for AI platform engineering. So that's the new definition of freshers. And the AI apprentice model is where some of these matured organizations are working, where the typical AI related onboarding, what they are supposed to do, it's mostly a hands-on role in terms of a life cycle of how an outcome is delivered to a client. So
Right.
the short answer is yes. I would say that about 30 to 40% of large mature organizations, including the GCCs that operated here, have adopted this model where workplace redesign, persona redesign, which means who are the new actors and actions in the context of AI. When an AI fails, what next? What business scenarios of testing has changed when AI has taken over completed repeated tasks? This is what the freshers will do, new task from going forward. So like I said, it's all about how you as an organizations are aligning to new workplace changes.
Absolutely.
The task is not gone, but the combination of tasks has emerged. That's the bigger opportunity.
Absolutely, Sunil. Thank you for that, Sunil. Gaurav, can revenue growth continue without corresponding headcount growth? Because if yes, then that changes what Indian IT really is. It becomes a different kind of industry than the one that practically built India's middle class.
No, that's a great question. Actually, that has a lot of interesting perspective. I recently shared with a couple of fund managers, right, who manage portfolios and money for a lot of people. And they said, is the technology sector story over? Because if I'm going to invest money, what about the
Hmm.
second level order of impact, Antara, right? There are a lot of people who drive cabs, which are dependent on IT industry, real estate industry, right? A lot of coffee chains that depend. So there's a second level, what we call a second and a third level impact. So if today IT is about 7% of the GDP,
Hmm.
actually it's indirectly directly about 15% of the GDP, because the second and third level of impact, right? So but the fundamental question here is, are we going to chase are we going to we are about roughly about 6.1 million people in the tech industry today. The question is, are we going to say that this is going to grow to 10 million? The way we answer this question, Antara, is we are probably going to get plateaued at about 6.5, 7 million people by 2030, another 3 or 4 years from now. But the value that each one of them adds to your top line is going to be fundamentally very different
Hmm.
as against what it had done in the past. And
Hmm.
probably, like I've called out maybe in our conversations with you and Sudhi as well, that a lot of this will also transform. You'll have a lot of new native AI services companies which are more frontier, like copycats of what you're seeing in OpenAI and Anthropic trying to build, or what Palantir did. If you saw the results, and if you saw what they've moved away from what they used to do only for public sector to now enterprise, which is like what even Sunil and his team is doing, which is go into an enterprise and build not just a consultative layer, but go and do a custom AI first application for, let's say,
Hmm.
solving a finance CFO's accounts payable problem. Today, he's outsourcing that to a BPM organization with a bunch of people sitting in India delivering that work. But can AI bring in? And that's already happening. Look at High Radius, look at Datamatics. Genpact has launched a few products on that area. Couple
Right.
of other clients that we work with have a specific AI agentic solution solving a point in time problem, either at a functional or a horizontal level, right? I think the way to look at this is, you will no longer have, and I'll actually break this down. We just recently released an interesting report on a revenue per employee analysis for a set of clients. If you
Okay.
look at 2019 to
Hmm.
2026, it's
Hmm.
fundamentally a large time frame, 7 year period. But 19 to 2023, just before Gen AI became more commercialized and open to a lot of public and started learning from data, so that was a period where there was a massive, headcount addition because of the future growth expected from digital transformation and technology services. This is a period, by the way, from 19 to 2026, right? Just to bring to your notice, if you look at the data, shows that the tech services industry revenue per employee, which is a
Hmm.
litmus test to understand are they making more or less,
Hmm.
has actually been hardly growing at about 0.75%. If you look at the top seven players, right?
Okay.
Which means if you look at the data on the surface level, you will feel that there's not a lot that each of them have added to the top line. But if you break this period into post COVID hype, right, to then a Gen AI hype, actually from 23 to
Hmm.
26,
Hmm.
we've actually seen them grow by about 2.5%, right, revenue per employee. So which means industry is adding much more. If you take 19 to 26, a longer 7 year period, we have grown, right?
Yeah.
Our whole industry was roughly about 200 odd billion. We have grown from about 220 to close to about 300 billion, with by
Right.
fundamentally adding very limited
Hmm.
amount of headcount. So that's the change that's come in through the digital transformation and AI embedded deals. But is the bigger challenge there is that allowing you would have definitely heard from this from a lot of CEOs that they are passing this benefit back to customers, right? They're not able to hold on to, and that's why the revenue per employee figure for some of them still $49,000 per employee to
Hmm.
49,000. 7 year period literally looks like you've not done much, right?
Yeah.
And that's also going to be a big challenge for the large tier one, tier two players, which is,
Hmm.
are they going to be able to invest whatever they're doing? How much of it's going to go into inorganic growth? How
Hmm.
much is going to go into R&D to actually build AI, native AI enterprise application,
Hmm.
apart from what Sunil talked about, which is the services layer, which will continue to deliver?
Right.
It looks like that a lot of them are passing the benefits back to customer. They are left with very little to invest back in R&D, M&A, and a lot of them are also cash-rich companies. So investors definitely expect them to pay dividends or, give back value in the form of cashbacks, right? buybacks. So the challenge for the large players and listed players is going to be about how they navigate this on the pricing side, on how they're able to build more, how they're also able to build the non-linear enterprise AI application. There is a playbook which some of the global players have already laid out, and services players are moving from services to application side. That's one. But I think the real job creation, the high value job creation, moving from a $50,000 per employee to maybe $150,000 will actually, in my opinion, come from a lot of non-listed smaller players, which will actually carve out a niche for themselves by industry verticals or by function. There could be specialists who are only solving a procurement head problem or a
Right.
finance head problem. And I think that will be a high value job. So to your question, the jobs will get created. There will be a
Okay.
segments of job that will be high value, and you're already seeing signs of that. But obviously, they are not listed players. They are, erstwhile technology services leaders who are coming out and building niche technology transformation services organizations.
All right, Gaurav. Thank you for that. Uh, I'll sort of build the next question on top of what you said, and I'll circle back to what Sunil was saying earlier about how AI is creating more jobs than it's taking, right? So the entry level job may not be disappearing, but the fact of the matter is that it may no longer be designed, for inexperienced employee who needs months of trainings, right? Companies increasingly want graduates who can work productively with AI from day one, and that's fair. Production ready, they want someone who is production ready and not just training ready. That by itself, I believe, is a very, very significant shift, and it does raise a question about who gets left behind when the entry barrier really goes up. Sunil, could higher entry requirements exclude students from smaller colleges and less privileged backgrounds? Because the students from, say, IITs and NITs will adapt, but what really happens to the students, student from, say, a tier 3 college, say from the state of Bihar or Rajasthan, who was counting on the IT industry's traditional absorptive capacity? What happens to them?
Oh, excellent question. So I'm also building up on what Gaurav talked about, the high value work and the compulsions it has on the quality of freshers. So if you see that, while slightly, if I take you to the opportunities that are presenting, if you are talking about, let's say, typical, 5 lakh, around 5 million freshers are being left out of the race, including the tier 2, tier 3 colleges we talked about.
Yeah.
But it is also throwing up opportunities for MSMEs, which is about 60 million. So these are the ones who have traditionally been left out of the mainstream
Yeah.
digital transformation phase. And now it's giving them an opportunity to deploy AI with SAP, with the legacy applications, with customer experience solutions. So to your specific point, so the AI is not creating that kind of bare minimum fluency requirements to directly transition into an AI role for tier 2 colleges. So you don't you don't stand an advantage if you're an fresh IIT graduate.
I believe we have lost connection with Sunil there. All right, Gaurav. While we try and connect back with Sunil, what is your take on this? What really happens to those students, those kids from tier 2, tier 3 cities who were not really, even prepared to handle something like this? And the pace, I believe, it's very, very fast. It's happening in the blink of an eye, at the drop of a hat, as we speak. What happens to the students from your vantage point?
No, I mean, I look at it from two perspectives. Again, if I
Okay.
think of it from an academia and a student perspective, definitely, Antara, it's a very challenging transition that we will do as an economy or as a country, right? Because every kid, at least when I was growing up around Bangalore, everybody
Yeah.
had a dream of joining an Infosys or a Wipro because those are the two big brands we knew, right? But
Absolutely.
there is, if you look at, we're close to about 1.6 to 1.7 million tech or STEM equivalent kind of graduates that pass out. So it is going to be a challenging transition phase because the amount of supply that we were building for the kind of demand, there was a match till about 90s and maybe early 2000s to about maybe sorry, not 90s, early 2000s to about maybe 2010 or maybe till about 2014 15. I think fundamentally a lot of things started changing from 16 onwards, right? When the ServiceNow, the Workday, or the SaaS ecosystem also started
Yeah.
coming in. I don't think those definitely, to simply answer your question, those will definitely get left behind, because I think the assumption was that you do a 4 year engineering degree, you will get a TCS or an Infosys or a services offer, maybe from a services company, and you will go there, get trained for about maybe 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 8 weeks, depending on which organization you're talking about,
Mhm.
and probably you will land a 3.5, 4 lakh or a 4.5, 5 lakh kind of a
Yeah.
job, right?
Yeah.
That model definitely, because the whole fundamental of the industry itself and the model has changed, that model breaks. So for the next 2 to 3 years, those who are already in the first year, second year, and final year, they are already seeing the pain. Like I said, right? An industry which was offering 7 to 8 lakh offers and onboards is
Mhm.
now close to about 1,80,000 offers in for FY27 full year completion. So there's a gap of about 5 lakh people who would probably not get a services job. But
Mhm.
the flip side of that, Antara, is I feel there was a fundamental shift which was required in the way our graduate ecosystem works. This will actually increasingly benefit. In the short term, it is definitely painful for somebody in Chandigarh, somebody in Vadodara, somebody in, maybe from places where I come from, let's say right, somebody coming from Bhuj or some of the other unknown, or Coimbatore or some of the other locations, right? But it's a wake up call for the academia to also be much closer to the industry and understand what's relevant, and accordingly build. So it's a responsibility that they'll have to take and start aligning with the GCC ecosystem, the new age AI services, the
Mm.
traditional technology services, to actually change this. But yes, for the next 3 to 4 years, or maybe 5 years, like I said, somebody who's in the first year
Yeah.
already doesn't know what direction to go in, because he's already
Fair.
jumped into it.
Fair.
But I think I'm seeing other change, which is, people are looking at other streams of education, which is a welcome change, because no longer services or GCCs were anyways not a choice for the freshers,
Mm.
but no longer services or technology traditional services industry is a choice. But yeah, short answer is next 4 years are going to be extremely painful.
I can imagine. Uh, Another thing that I want to ask, Gaurav, is who really provides practical training when companies stop investing in fresher development? Because that cost is now being pushed onto students and families and universities that weren't really designed or equipped to provide it in the first place.
I think I think it's a very interesting question. I mean, also if you look at, Antara, the cost of training itself, in my opinion, again the question is: are you going to choose the traditional technology services career path,
Hmm.
or are you going to choose the enterprise AI application part, or a software product development industry part?
Mhm.
It has various colors to it as to which part of the color that you're choosing. But if you
Hmm.
are looking at the domestic, thankfully we also track a lot of the BFSI technology and the retail technology India ecosystem, right?
Hmm.
Which means what is the likes of HDFC or an Axis or a Metro or DMart or some of the others are doing when it comes to enterprise technology. And because we work with a couple of the private equities there, right, who have investments in portfolio companies,
Hmm.
we're definitely seeing a lot of opportunities in the local India ecosystem
Hmm.
for a lot of these graduates to probably transition and focus to maybe joining an HDFC's bank's internal tech ecosystem. Obviously, they may not be as high paying or as lucrative in the short run. But Antara, if you look at the transition that they will do probably in the short run and then go on to join maybe a product firm,
Hmm.
definitely that's an investment they can do on themselves.
Hmm.
Given the amount of AI tools that are available, the cost of training, cost of learning, upskilling yourself is actually 1/10 of what it used to be when I started, or
Hmm.
maybe 1/10 of what it used to be in 2016 as well, right?
Hmm.
So there's a lot of effort that the academia and the students will have to put themselves to actually identify which path are they choosing. Number one, second, also what kind of upskilling they are aspiring. Don't
Right.
expect companies to. If I was to give you another statistic that we track, right, global and for the India
Mhm.
technology ecosystem, the L&D spends are predominantly flat for freshers or even laterals, right? They're expecting you to upskill yourself and invest in that. But the avenues, the good part is the avenues of those, the costs have actually come down by as much as 1/10.
Okay. All right, Gaurav. Thank you for sharing that. Sunil, yes, you want to complete
Yeah,
your answer? Yeah.
Gaurav made some excellent data points, which is so real life. And that's what recently we were advising the board of some prominent MNCs. that whenever they talk about AI deployment, they should plow back, 30% of the productivity gains from AI on fresher training budget. So this is absolutely missing today, because one of the hallmarks of AI fluency, especially for freshers, whether they're from a IIT background or they're from a second rung college from a tier 3 city, what's happening is that these budgets are helping organizations to reskill these freshers with the knowledge of legacy systems, the components of cybersecurity. So the contours of AI components, right from the customer journey to the functionality, like for example, the procurement function. Every second GCC I advise, are moving procurement to the AI functionality. So virtually it's eliminating those jobs. So those who come from a tier 2, tier 3 engineering college have excellent opportunity to get exposed to functional domain, which is typically what they call from order to cash, procure to pay, hire to retire processes within an organization. So I think great point, Gaurav. So I think when we talk about enabling and training these freshers and budgets flowing back, those organizations who are earmarking budgets as an outcome of their AI advantages that they reap, flowing back to these freshers, is creating that exceptional chain of redeployed AI fluent workforce. So just thought of sharing this data point.
Absolutely, Sunil. And Gaurav, Sunil, thank you for the clarity on that. I also want to talk about GCCs here because they are often cited as a solution to these problems, I would say. Uh, Global capability centers are expanding, I would say, significantly, right? Engineering, product development, research, analytics, cybersecurity, AI, of course. They are creating high quality jobs, but they are also recruiting for specific capabilities and not conducting mass campus hiring. Uh, Sunil, I have a question for you here. Would you say that GCCs would remain concentrated in specialized high value roles, and also you advise companies on GCC strategy. So are multinationals genuinely moving core R&D and product ownership to India, or is India still being used primarily for cost efficiency, just with a better story stitched around it? What is it?
Yeah, I think partially, yes, they are doing some significant R&D work, but that's restricted to less than 10-15% of the 1800 GCCs that we have. But what the GCCs continue to do is becoming glamorous delivery execution centers. So they are perfecting delivery. And what the kind of hype you see in the media is absolutely valid. A large number of organizations are not becoming product organizations. They are not executing without approval. That's the real test of GCCs. The moment that you start building product without the parent company headquarters approval, that's when you realize that you're doing high value GCC work here. So you can sort of safely assume that about 15 to 10 20% of them are doing core R&D, being real R&D, and less than about 8 to 10% are filing IPs from here. That's the real test of a global capability center. Otherwise they would become, like I said, very efficient delivery execution centers. And the day we move that 8% to 15-20% in filing IP and creating AI, the focus on AI platform engineering, creating AI where the H2 starts depending on the India organizations for AI products and platforms. That's the day when high value work is happening. But yes, there is a war for talent, because simply GCCs, what you hear about GCCs, being the best paymasters, hiring very special value, workforce, it's only about the AI architects part of it and product specialists. So there is a lot of consumption coming from the startup world, because that's a ready, reckoner for them in terms of consumption of getting product managers there. But specifically to answer this question on are GCCs doing the kind of work they should be doing, they're evolving, but not as much as the hype that is being generated.
All right, Sunil. Thank you for so candidly answering that question there. In the interest of time, Gaurav and Sunil, I will have to wrap this segment. But before I do that, I do have one question for you, for the both of you here. Uh, you know, India's traditional employment playbook had two pillars essentially, right? IT services absorbing the educated workforce, and manufacturing absorbing the workforce coming out of agriculture. Now AI is disrupting IT, and modern factories like semiconductors, electronics, and advanced manufacturing are increasingly automated, capital intensive, and not labor intensive, I would say. Gaurav, actually, I have two questions here. One question is for you, Gaurav. Which industries can realistically create employment at India's required scale, and also are policymakers still pursuing an employment model designed, for an earlier industrial era?
That's a great question. I would love to be sitting with the economist of the minister and answering that question. But if you look at, actually, we draw Antara a very interesting graph, right? Where we look at what is the GDP per capita added by different services industries, agriculture, and industry, right? Thanks to some of the work that we get to do with some of the bureaucrats, right? If you look at technology industry was at the top of the curve in terms of the GDP per capita added or the average salaries. I'll give you another anecdote, right? And I'm sure you must have heard this. The entire outer ring road in Bangalore, if you understand that term, right, is one stretch of 43 kilometers where the average salary of somebody between the GCC and high-end tech services is anywhere between 8 to 10 lakhs. Now compare that to the average salary at an India level. There's a huge difference. To your question, 600 million people employed in the country. If I look at knowledge workforce, technology plus BFSI plus others, it's a very difficult question to answer if you look at it at a country scale level. We are
Okay.
talking about close to about 30 to 40 million people in the knowledge driven services industry, right? Now, where will the absorption happen? I think we will have to have various pillars at a country level, which should actually absorb this 50 to 100 million knowledge workforce, right? Which means these are accounting, consultants, like myself and Sunil, who are running organizations trying to advise people based on data and our experiences. I think there will be one. We actually had the startups, the ecosystem of B2C, B2B startups. Thankfully, the B2B startup ecosystem has grown. We have very good companies that have gone public, sustainably growing their top line, bottom line. So there's going to be one ecosystem which will build for India from India, right? Which is in the aerospace, in the defense space, in the agri-tech space. There are phenomenal examples. I don't think I can go into the details, but we work with some of them thanks to, again, like I said, the VCP ecosystem. That will absorb a lot of high value, high quality talent, which will build solutions. As of now, India to India, maybe India to Southeast Asia. Some of them are going and doing work in Middle East and Japan, which is doing well. You will actually then have a new breed of industry, which is going to be AI applications, which is like Sunil said, if hire to retire, let's say in the HR cycle, right? Somebody solving for, let's say, only a talent acquisition, only a learning and solution, right? That will be, in my opinion, if the veterans from the industries come out and build that, there's a lot of value. I'm seeing some of them already come out and build. Again, some of them we get to work with who are building procurement solution, but a part of procurement or a part of finance solution
Right.
or an HR solution. And similarly, the industry vertical solution, let's say anti-money laundering, that will be a new age of industry which we definitely need badly as a country
Yeah.
if you want to target that 80,000 $100,000 per employee kind of value, and the second and the third level of order of impact to that. I think services, like I've called out in many of our interactions, Antra, with you and Sudhi, I think it will transform and change into more of a commoditized. If a services has not pivoted to AI services and AI application, I think we will become like the FMCG industry of the future, or the telecom. There was a boom in telecom industry, and now if you look at AT&T and again, I'm not going into the details, but they've got commoditized. So I think part of the services industry, unfortunately, will still remain relevant, but will get commoditized. They will probably plateau at between 5 to 7 million people and continue to create what you call as backfill jobs, right? New jobs will be limited, but attrition backfill will keep happening. I think then there's the product and the platform industry. I think we are very bullish that a lot of your platform and product, enterprise platform and product industry will actually create a lot of techno-functional or domain experts jobs in the future. So I have a nephew of mine, Antara, and what I advise him is to actually get into what you call as a techno-functional expertise, which is understand technology, because technology is commoditized. Knowledge that Sunil has, Gaurav has, and my nephew will have will almost be similar. That's why the cost of tokens will also come down. The cost of SaaS and
Okay.
products are also consistently coming
Interesting.
down. But the depth of the domain will always make you a differentiated value and asset for the organization. So I think that's the asset that, which will be a very differentiated asset that the product and platform industry will create. That's
Correct.
my take on the technology knowledge work ecosystem.
Mhm. All right. All right. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for sharing your perspective on that. Uh,
Antara, can I just add to that?
Absolutely. Please, Sunil.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, three industries, Gaurav set the foundation right. Three industries to watch for where actual desperate AI hiring is happening. You can share this with your viewers. These are real life. The first is climate engineering. AI in climate engineering disrupting big time in India. A lot of organizations deploying AI governance related, functionalities, platform and products to support that, digital healthcare. And third is the in part of a regulated industry. And if you see, people like Infosys who run 100 plus regulated industries, GCCs, that is where some of the maximum hiring. So Gaurav mentioned about AI, AML and anti-money laundering integration. So that whole wealth management related functionalities of banking and insurance, so and the KYC due diligence integration. So these industries, I'm seeing as we speak, maximum AI related deployments, the readiness to deploy AI. Very importantly, we didn't get a chance to speak in detail on that, but the agentic AI is throwing significant opportunities for
Right.
all those human plus AI tasks in these three industries. So, if anybody is thinking of focusing, Gaurav talked about what he advises youngsters to take up. If they just focus on these three industries, it gives them domain, AI, the tech skills all in one.
All right. All right, Sunil. Thank you for that. And Sunil, if you have time right now, I would like to quickly touch upon what Vembu also said, if
Yeah, I
that's
just
okay
have
with you.
5 minutes to
All
rush
right,
for another
I'll
event.
be
But
brief here. Uh, and I want to talk about his actual proposal because I do think that it deserves a serious examination here. Vembu argues that deep tech capability matters not primarily because of the direct jobs it creates, but because it gives India an economic and strategic leverage. Now, countries with valuable technology can trade on favorable terms and retain IP and decide how the resulting prosperity gets distributed. Uh, Sunil, my question is this: can deep technology, generate enough national wealth without creating large numbers of direct jobs? And also, is this a realistic model for India, or is it just an elegant theory that wouldn't account for the scale of the problem?
no, excellent question and fairly sensitive one. Uh, in my experience, yes, deep tech is fairly wish list, and so long as we focus on IP around deep tech, that's the scalable proposition. Else, it can be on the sitting on the fence,
Yeah.
hoping for the ecosystem to evolve. So my take is yes, focus on IP. This is an pleasant outcome of that.
All right. All right, Sunil. Gaurav and Sunil, thank you so much for your time. It's been a very educational conversation. And if we did have more time, I would have loved to take a deeper dive into this topic at hand. But thank you so much for your time. It has been an invigorating conversation. And for everybody who is tuned in right now, Sridhar Vembu is right about the question, even if you disagree with his answer. The real issue is not whether AI will destroy or create jobs. It is whether India can really redesign its economy quickly enough to ensure that unprecedented technological productivity produces, widely shared prosperity rather than growth without employment. And that is by far the hardest question India faces right now. And it doesn't have a comfortable answer yet. So we will keep a very, very close watch on this sector. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I'm Antara. This is Point Break. We'll see you again next episode.
Thanks, Antra.